Hello, everyone. I am the second coming of Jesus Christ. And I know that it's probably going to be very confusing, and so I do want to make sure that I explain everything. The reason why I decided to come back as YouTuber Dan Henschel, is because we felt like that this was probably the way that people were going to be most receptive. We have almost come back a lot of times since the first time. We were at first, after the original thing happened, we were kind of like, well, let's just give it 1,000 years. That seemed like a nice round number. And then we were getting all ready, and then the Black Plague happened. So then we said, okay, well, let's give it another, couple hundred years. All ready to go the second time, slavery and the Civil War. So we were like, that's a whole thing that, we don't want to get involved in all that. We like to kind of keep racial politics out of it. So we said, all right, well, I guess there's really no rush. The thing is that it's a very difficult thing to try and coordinate, because it's not necessarily about, most peaceful time or most turbulent time, or it's really, when is society going to be most receptive to it? Or and that doesn't even mean necessarily like most open-minded. It just means, when is this going to have the most impact? It's like, you don't want to, if there's a bunch of stuff in the news that's going to overshadow my message, or that's going to sort of cause my message to just get lost, then obviously we want to wait for a more lucrative, because we only get a couple shots at this. We can't come back in a week and be like, oh, by the way, I'm here again because we didn't get enough coverage on the news the last time. So it's just a whole very, very careful, sensitive operation. So the actually, there were two times, because when the year 2000 happened, when the new millennia happened, we were like, okay, we gotta come back now, because it's been a very long time. It's been 2,000 years. All ready to go. It was another situation where it was like, literally, we were all ready to go. I was all ready to get on, I was ready to go down the chute. 9/11. Then the Iraq War. And we were like, oh, geez. And that really messed everything up, because that was sort of our place. That was like where we were sort of going to set up shop. But then it just became a whole nightmare over there, and it never got better. So then we made the decision, let's come back in America this time, just because I feel like, it's a no-brainer, right? The last time it made a little bit more sense, because that was sort of centralized where everything was. But nowadays, it's things have changed, So we said, okay, fine, we'll do America. COVID. So then we said, well, maybe then, after Trump, once Trump got elected, and then there's all that stuff, and then COVID kind of, people got over it. Then we were like, okay, it's almost go time here, because I think this would be the perfect time for society to really sort of get it, get what we were going for. And then we said, well, what makes sense now, we got to evaluate what is the zeitgeist, what is in the current time. So we were like, well, influencers, that's kind of a no-brainer, social media. Jesus, which should probably come back as a social media influencer, because that's the way that he's going to be able to get the most eyeballs on him at the most amount of time. If you think about it, I was kind of the first, and it almost seems like a misnomer to say me, because this is my second coming for him. I'm the same guy, but also I've of course had to be funneled into a different vessel, and so that changes things, and there's the Holy Trinity, and all that stuff that really, honestly, you don't have to understand. It's a very heady concept, half the time I don't even know what it means, So so we said, okay, well, social media influencer, that makes sense. But there's so many more pockets of culture. There's so many subcultures. And it's an interesting thing where it's kind of like, social media kind of made it so that everybody can create any niche that they want. And there's nobody who can be truly famous, like Michael Jackson. We had when we designed the mood board, we were referencing Michael Jackson a lot, Taylor Swift, these people that seem to sort of be larger than life, the Beatles, and we were like, okay, well, how can we learn from what they did? How can we speak to a current appetite? And for a while, we were thinking about coming back when we were going to come back, before 9/11, we were going to come back as a musician, as a sort of a new wave kind of thing. But then obviously that didn't work. And so we were sort of all gearing up to do the influencer thing. And then we said, well, it doesn't make any sense. The thing is, we don't want to come back as someone who people have already made up their mind about. We don't want to come back as Justin Bieber. Not that there's anything wrong with. I mean, he's. I think that a lot of what happened when Justin Bieber was famous was very unfair. And it was very odd. That people were targeting such a young. I mean, I understood. Obviously, I understood. I was like, I get it, man. Hey, look what happened to me. But it was just very strange. And so we were worried also that people were going to think that I was Justin Bieber. Because we were like, well, he's doing almost a better job at this than we had to kind of go back to the drawing board, because we were like, he hit a lot of the story beats that we were going to do, Anyway, the reason we settled on Dan Henschel's YouTube was because we watched a lot of his videos and we thought it was a very interesting, we thought what he was doing with comedy was very interesting. What he was doing with sort of blurring the line between reality and fiction. And we thought that is the perfect chord, and we were watching Up in Heaven. We were watching a lot of Norm Macdonald. We were watching a lot of Andy Kaufman. We were watching a lot of these guys who were able to sort of be like, is it real? Is it a bit? And we kind of wanted to capture that energy. We wanted people to say, well, is he really Jesus or is he not Jesus, or what's going on here, really? If you think about it, we were kind of doing that the first time, and that was really what was the propellant force here, And there have been so many people who have falsely claimed to be Jesus since then and to be the second coming of Christ, that we were like, well, how do we avoid doing what they did? And honestly, that was something that I said, we probably don't have to worry about it, because the reason why nobody believes them is because they don't have the juice, They don't have it. They don't have they don't have that magic kind of charisma, riz now they call it, that I have and that our message has. So anyway, long story short, I'm back, and I gotta say, there's a lot that I just wasn't prepared for, that we weren't really prepared for, because the first time it was tough, I mean, it was a rough world. There was a lot of violence and brutality and stoning people. I don't think people nowadays getting stoned means something completely different, which I really was not used to. I went to a party the other day, and the guy was like, "Hey, we're gonna go get stoned," and I was like, "Oh my God, what? No! You can't do that to this innocent poor person." God, this is the worst. I need to get there. They didn't have hair ties back in the first iteration, so I got to go to some of those, get some hair ties. It's just been a whole adjustment. I mean, all this stuff is different. I hate wearing. What am I? This this collared shirt is disgusting. Back when back the first time when I came back, it was just, we didn't, I mean, like I said, it was tough. We didn't have medicine, we didn't have any technological advances. I mean, if it rained, it just rained in your house. But we were kind of living large. I mean, we were free. We just got to hang out all day. The weather was great. And the weather's nice here in Southern California, too. That was one of my big sticking points, because I was like, listen, if I go back, I'm not going to fucking Minnesota. I want to go to somewhere where it's actually nice. And the board was like, well, there's not a whole lot. Interestingly, there's really not a whole lot of places where we knew it had to be a big city. But there's not a lot of big cities that are also pleasant climates, which is odd. Isn't that strange? Why is that? So anyway, so LA was the magic one. So, the rollout was something that we debated for a long time. And then ultimately what we decided is we should have the next Jesus to be totally assimilated into the current culture enough to understand it, and to speak to the people in a way that they're going to be receptive to. So we said you should grow up in that culture. You should have and it's kind of cool the way that we can, because we're able to. We decided, like, okay, we're going to have Jesus come back at 2025. So that means we're going to plant you in 1996 so that when you get to Jesus age, then it'll be good timing. We can sort of just like move time, whenever we want, really. Another cool thing is that heaven is the internet. I just thought that's kind of cool, But yeah. It was like, so we'll put you back in the 90s, and then you can grow up, and then by the time you're Jesus age, you can get started with all your crap, But I have to tell you, I work at an accounting place, and it's awful. I mean, for my first day, here I am, we said, well, we don't want you to show up with just rags and sandals, so you need to look nice, and you probably have to cut your hair. And I was like, I can't cut the hair. The hair is the whole thing. I have to keep the hair. So they said, all right, well, you can keep the hair, but you got to shave. You at least shave the beard. At least look like you're and then I said, well, can I at least get some tattoos? And they were like, no, absolutely not. You gotta, that's our one sticking point. And then I was like, well, can I be gay? And they said, no. But then I was sort of like, well, what if I feel like that would make people that would be an interesting little twist there. And they said, no, the thing is, you have to be somebody who, you have to be all four quadrants. You have to appeal to all four quadrants of the population, so all audiences, mainstream audiences, children, but also adults and young people and old people and people from all sorts, like the Avengers. And we looked at the Avengers movie a lot, and we looked at a lot of those types of movies, the Marvel movies and things, because they were hitting on things that were how to speak to a large audience, an international audience, and sort of hit the magic home run. That would make it appeal to everybody, and at a certain point I was kind of like, so what exactly are we going to say this time? What's going to be the point? Because the first time the point was, you can be forgiven for your sin. To be honest with you, I don't even really I never really fully got the point of the first time myself. Because the whole idea, I get that the whole idea was like, well, you're going to come back and you're going to die for everybody's sins. And I was like, why does that make a difference? And And they said, well, because there's original sin because of Adam and Eve, which is a whole other story. So you dying now is sort of like God making a sacrifice. And it's just people, whenever I ask about it up there, they say all this mumbo jumbo that I think is kind of to disguise the fact that they don't know what it means either, because I was like, all right, fine, I died for your sins, but why? What was the point? I guess maybe not everything has to have a point, I guess sometimes it's just doing stuff for the sake of art or expression, But still, I think that a lot of I guess they were on the right track because it really worked. Everybody still talks about it thousands of years later. We were afraid that it wasn't going to catch, but a lot of that is marketing. A lot of that was after the fact, making sure that the apostles and the guys and the monks were writing stuff down and that they had access to really good ink, and paper. Paper was very hard to find back then. Writing stuff hadn't even really been invented yet. It was so people. There were only like 3 people who wrote stuff down. So that's a big. That creates its own unique challenges though, because now everybody's got a phone in their pocket. It was like at first the challenge was you need to figure out how to write it down, but if you get it written down, then you're good. Because there's only 2 things that have ever been written down. So if you're one of the 2 things, then you're gonna survive, and people are gonna know about you. But now it's like you can put anything, you can film anything with an iPhone. You can put anything on the internet. So how do you cut through? So you've got to make sure then that the content of your message is even more resonant than before. You can't half-ass it like before. There were a lot of, and it's like I just said, there were a lot of times before when we were sort of like, well, why are we doing this exactly? And we'd be like, well, it doesn't have to completely make sense because half the details are going to be forgotten anyway, over the course of thousands of years. And people were very easily amused back then, so you could do pretty easy stuff and people would be like, oh, and it's not that that's changed. It's just that people now, I think, are really desensitized from the internet. They are sort of confronted with spectacles all day long. We were watching, we've been keeping up with the movies and TV shows, and we were like, Jesus Christ, this guy, Chris Nolan, he's doing some pretty cool stuff. How are we going to compete with that? Michael Bay, and we reached out to a lot of these guys, and women too, Catherine Bigelow, we talked to her. We wanted to make sure that we were getting some diverse voices in there, Greta Gerwig, to sort of handle the more, and I don't mean this to be in any sort of way, but it was like, we want to get the spectacle side of things, and we also want to get the emotional side of things, so Little Women, we watched a lot of that, Lady Bird, just trying to make sure that we have our palette, that we can sort of sculpt what we're going to do, it's in a very performance arty type of way. But people were very amused back then, so you could sort of half-ass the details and nobody would really question it. Whereas now, we got to make sure we have all our P's and Q's, We got to make sure that we are on it. So, anyway, that's all to say, really, I don't know, man. I don't know. I just feel like we now I will confess something. We do know how this ends. And it's not great, but it's not as soon as you might think. So it was very easy for us to think, well, why even bother? And I don't want to give too much away. No spoilers, right? But we did have times where the very valid question would come up, why should we even bother? Because if we just give a couple more X amount of years, not going to say how many, but if we just move, then it's, our problems will all be solved. And we actually made a similar mistake the first time we ever tried to come back. When I got crucified and all that stuff happened, that was not the first time that we tried. That was just the first time that it worked, you know. The first time I came back, I walked out of the cave and I was like, hey guys, and then the only thing I saw in front of my face was a stegosaurus, you know, and I was like, ah, shit, you know, we were got to go back in there and recalibrate the damn thing, right? That happened a lot. One time I came back and there was just nothing. That was weird. So, and I still don't know if it was because I was too early or too late, you know. Anyway, it's hard, you know. I mean, I really gotta admit, it's like when you come down here, I just get so depressed, you know. And it's hard to even explain up there what depression is, because you start talking about it and they're like, what? You know? And I'm like, no, you don't understand. It's like it's like when I'm in this body, I feel the physical weight of being alive more than I feel certainly when you're up there and you're just sort of an ethereal spirit, you know, you don't have any of those problems. But when you're in a body, you're just like, oh, it's like you're going around. And I remember this from the first time, you know, it was like, I always feel like I'm carrying around, because you are literally just carrying around several hundred pounds of weight. Even if you know, I mean, and I actually struggled a lot with body image issues and things like that. Just all this weird stuff that you don't really, that when you're a beam of light, you don't think about, you know. And it's just, I don't know. I don't even know. Like I look around and I'm like, how could you guys, I just don't understand why, you know, you think back to the Adam and Eve. I wish you guys could have seen the Garden of Eden, because it was really great. I mean, it was perfect. But there is something, you know, and if you ask Satan about this, I'm sure he'll give you a whole earful about his whole perspective, you know. He is probably going to make a video on this channel too. Please, just do not. Just remember that he is lying, and he's very, very good at deceiving people. Because it was just so great. And now you look and it's like, man, I mean, at least compared to the first time, there's not as much beating people with rocks. But there's still just like all sorts of sociological, like, I mean, it's awful. It's just awful. I don't know how to fix it. I really don't. And I've sort of been a little depressed because I'm like, because I do a Skype call. Well, I mean, I guess that's what, you know, I guess that's the closest translation. Obviously, it's not actually. That man seems to be walking after a wolf of some sort. A very friendly wolf. Normally, it's the other way around. Normally, the wolf chases the guy. That's interesting. Great. I hope I don't have to get out there and fucking help the guy. Stupid. People, I've seen so many people with these wolves, and they all have them on strings. Why? Doesn't make any sense. All this stuff doesn't make any sense. It's just like things that you're trying to do to idle your time. You know, to confront the meaninglessness of the whole endeavor. The food is pretty good. I mean, if you know where to go, you know, and you have to have money, that sucks. Money is probably the worst thing, you know. And I just want to shake everybody's shoulders and be like, you know that this isn't real, right? Money isn't even real. So why are you making it decide every single thing that you do? But there's no answer, because it really doesn't matter. Now, I'll tell you the other thing that I like, though. Happy juice. We certainly didn't have this stuff back in the olden days. I don't even know what that era would be called. I mean, it feels conceited to call it the era of Christ. Saying before Christ and Anno Domini feels a little self-centered, and I don't want people to think that I'm a narcissist. But that's what you guys call it. So I guess I'm just saying, I'm just being normal, I guess. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You know something? The closest way that I can explain what it feels like to be in the afterlife as an ethereal beam of light is heroin. So, I know that that's pretty problematic now when you're on Earth in a body, but when you get up there, it's great. Oh man. So it's been hard. It's been hard not to just become a junkie, but that would defeat the whole purpose of I've just got to stick to the mission, because if I start getting distracted by all this stuff and I blow it, oh man, I don't even know what would happen. I'd probably have to go to hell, I'd probably become the next Satan, because we're thinking about, not that we're going to replace him, but he's on thin ice, so the next thing that he does, he's got 2 strikes, third strike, you're out. So probably what would happen if I messed up is they'd be like, all right, well, you're Satan now, and you do not want to be Satan, trust me. I mean, he's found a way to sort of enjoy it. I'm sorry, I don't know why I'm so preoccupied with him today. God almighty. Oh, I'm sorry about that, sorry. It's hard not to curse, That's the other thing that's hard. I'm just depressed. And I don't know how to make it go away. And they still haven't told me how they're going to kill me yet this time. I really hope that it's not as terrible as last time. And it seems like you guys have gotten a lot more civilized since then. But I gotta tell you, that was horrible. That was horrible. Getting crucified, I mean. God almighty. So, man, it's very hard not to do that. That would be funny if they just made me do it again. Get crucified again, even though nobody does that anymore. I guess it would fit the theme, but then it would kind of be like, we also were, one of the things that we were really concerned about was just sort of making it a sequel, a bad sequel that adds nothing thematically to the original. And so something we referenced a lot was Chris Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy, because we said this first one's great, but the second one transcends it to a whole different plane. That's what we want to do with our sequel. And then the third one's just a disaster that we don't even talk about, so we're probably not going to do a third time, honestly. But we'll see how this one goes. I don't know. We'll see what the response is like. Anyway, I guess that's all for now. I just sort of wanted to get it, get it all out there. Yeah, much more to come.